Hey there, folks. Welcome to this edition of Croz's Corner. Today I want to talk to you about a term that has gained a lot of traction, gotten a lot of attention in our culture. And that term is toxic masculinity. As with a lot of goofy ideas in our culture, this one had its origin in the halls of academia, and they were supposedly trying to explain the male propensity for violence and aggression on the one side, or for the propensity to not be able to express your emotions or maintain close friendships on the other. The term has basically become a catch-all phrase for anything that straight white males do, and it has something to do with the patriarchy. But needless to say, it is a goofy, misguided, misled, not rooted in truth idea. And I want to try to talk about and clarify this notion today. Apparently, this toxic masculinity is an attempt to make men nice, quote unquote. It's important to note, from a Christian perspective, that word nice is not in Scripture, not once. You do see the word be kind, be loving. We do not see the word nice. When I die, if I had a choice to have an epitaph on my tombstone, if it was he was a really nice guy versus he was a scary man of God, I would take the latter every day of the week and twice on Sunday. This idea of being nice has become kind of this meaningless phrase of trying to make people in general and men in particular just kind of sweet and sappy and spineless. My question is, when is the last time you heard Christianity in general, or the church in particular, or men in the church in particular, described with words such as these? Conviction, initiative, courage, adventure, purpose, strength, boldness, risk, daring, passion, and on and on and on. We rarely define Christianity in those terms, don't we? A guy by the name of David Murrow wrote an excellent book called Why Men Hate Going to Church. And if this topic interests you at all, I couldn't recommend that book more highly. It lays it all out. These are the kind of things, the kind of reasons why men hate going to church. The church caters towards the gifts of mercy and love and hospitality and servanthood. But it kind of leaves out this side of risk and daring and adventure and courage. In that book, Why Men Hate Going to Church, he talked about a survey, a personality survey. And in personality surveys, 85% of Christian men test as having a passive personality compared to 62% of men in the culture. Now think of that. 85% of men in the church have a passive personality. How did it get like that? Especially when only 60% of that is in the culture. We've lost the side of strength and purposeful masculinity and manhood. I want to read two verses for you from Scripture, from 1 Corinthians 16, verses 13 and 14. Very short. It says this very simply. Be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, be strong, do everything in love. Now, there's a very important thing here that will stand out in this verse that you don't see in the English translation, but comes up very clearly in the original Greek that the Scripture was written in. That word courageous there, where it says be courageous, be strong, in the Greek it's not the word courageous. It's the word act like men. Carry yourself like a man. Be manly. That's the word in Greek. And there's two things interesting here. The translators of Scripture, in this case the NIV, felt the need to be politically correct and take out the sex-based, gender-based reference to that in the Scripture of act like men, be manly. But then it's interesting, they chose the word courageous to translate that. Why? Because they know that's what was being said. Men don't have a lock on courage. They're not the only gender that can be courageous. But masculine traits are generally courageous, strong, passionate, bold, if they are allowed to be men. And they chose the word courageous to describe what men can and should be. Act like men. Now it's interesting here. It says, be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, be strong. But then the next thing it says is, do everything in love. That's the answer to supposed toxic masculinity. Men, be strong, be courageous, act like men, but do everything in love. Being masculine is not an excuse to abuse people, to mistreat people, to do whatever toxic masculinity means. Be courageous, be strong, act like men, but do everything in the love of God, in the love of Christ. I've got news for us. I've got news for our culture. Supposed masculine traits are inherent. They're not culturally created. They're not culturally conjured. Things like conviction, initiative, adventure, daring, passion, strength, boldness, all the things that we traditionally think of as being masculine, those things are inherent in a man. God-given, God-placed, God-put, God-ordained. But one of three things is going to happen to those inherent, manly, godly traits. One, they'll be squashed by our culture, by the church, by this pressure to just be nice, and men will turn into passive, spineless, as C.S. Lewis used to say, men without chests. But these men will still dream on the inside of being adventurous and daring and passionate, but on the outside, the basic thing you'll see is being withdrawn and depressed, because that's what you get when you squash these things in a man. The second thing that can happen, if these traits aren't channeled towards good ends and good results, you get a violent man, an aggressive man, an unjust man, an unkind man. And these manly energies and masculine passions do harm instead. That's why the family, the church, society at large, one of the greatest roles of society, the family, the church, is to funnel those masculine energies, to train those masculine energies into godly purposes, just purposes, so that men become perpetrators of justice, forces of justice, rather than forces of injustice. You are always going to get one of those three things: withdrawn men, evil men, or strong, godly, passionate men. We need to release the godly traits that Christ has put inside of all men and train them in the love of God to be courageous and strong. And I tell you what, when we do that, when we release true godly masculinity, it will be the solution and the cure for a lot of society's ills, like fatherlessness, which we're going to talk about in our next video, and a whole lot of other things. One of my favorite movies is Braveheart. Mel Gibson as William Wallace, the fight that Scotland went through to get independence from England. In the final scene in that movie, it shows the Scots charging the field in Bannockburn. And the Scots win the Battle of Bannockburn and ensure their independence after winning this battle at Bannockburn. As you see the Scots charging the English lines, you hear Mel Gibson's voice. William Wallace is now dead, but you hear his voice in narration. And he says, the Scots fought like warrior poets. I love that. Men need to be warriors. They need to be strong and passionate and courageous and adventurous and daring and risk-taking like warriors. But they need to be like poets, kind, loving, sensitive, wise, discerning. Both of these things together. I want to encourage you, men. Stand firm in your faith. Be courageous. Be strong. Do everything in love. We'll see you the next time.